Apparently, delivering a best man speech wasn't the only performance my brother had prepared for my wedding day. You know that magical moment at weddings when everyone's eyes are misty. The string quartet is playing something that costs $200 per minute, and the entire room collectively holds its breath as two people promise to love each other forever. Yeah, that's exactly when my brother Bowen decided to lean in, during my actual vows, mind you, and whisper, "Slept with Stella last month. Thought you should know before you say I do. I'm Tyler Weston, and this is the story of the wedding where I said I don't in the most spectacular fashion possible." The thing about being a cybersecurity expert for a Fortune 500 company in suburban Connecticut is that people tend to underestimate exactly how good I am at surveillance, which is why when Bowen's hot breath hit my ear with that little bombshell, I didn't gasp. I didn't flinch. I smiled. Not the tight, "I'm pretending everything's fine" smile of a man whose world just imploded. No, a genuine, "I've been waiting for this" smile that made my cousin Darren's eyebrows shoot up so high they nearly left his forehead. Bowen expected devastation. Instead, I whispered back, "Check your phone, bro." Then I winked. The beauty of having the wedding at the Lakeside Country Club's grand ballroom was the excellent Wi-Fi. Never underestimate good connectivity when planning to destroy someone's life. Aunt Virginia clutched her pearls as Bowen's face transitioned through more shades than a Home Depot paint sample wall. Ivory to ghost white to a lovely shade of oh shit green in about 3 seconds flat. See, Bowen didn't know that 6 weeks earlier, I'd come home early from a business trip to Seattle and found something interesting on Stella's MacBook. She'd accidentally left her iMessage synced to it. Rookie mistake. And there was my dear brother, sending her eggplant emojis that weren't about his garden harvest. Classic Bowen, always thinking with the wrong head. But here's where it gets interesting. Instead of confronting them immediately like some basic cable reality show reject, I decided to play the long game. Because this wasn't just about one betrayal. This was about a pattern. 2 years ago, my relationship with Eliza Jenkins mysteriously imploded when she accused me of cheating. I never understood where she got that idea, until I found texts between Bowen and Stella where he casually mentioned pulling the same stunt I did with Eliza. Turned out, my brother had been systematically sabotaging my relationship since college. The golden child couldn't stand seeing me happy. So I crafted a plan worthy of my $120K cybersecurity degree from MIT. I pretended to know nothing. Meanwhile, I installed monitoring software on Stella's devices. Ethically questionable, perhaps. Effective, absolutely. I set up hidden cameras in my own house. Completely legal, by the way. And most importantly, I created a Dropbox folder labeled Wedding Memories that I shared with every single wedding guest. The video I sent to Bowen's phone during our vows wasn't just the highlight reel of him and Stella. It was the full director's cut, including the part where Stella, wearing a wire I'd convinced her to use after confronting her privately, got him to admit everything. "Did you do this to Tyler's ex too, Eliza?" Stella had asked, her voice crystal clear on the recording. Bowen's laugh still makes my skin crawl. "Eliza, Jenna before her, that chick from his office. It's so easy. Plant a seed of doubt, watch it grow. Tyler's always been too trusting. Dad always said he'd make partner at the firm first, get the beach house first, get married first. I just helped delay the schedule. And then the money shot, Stella looking directly at the camera I'd hidden in her necklace pendant. Is this clear enough, Tyler? Did we get everything you needed?" That's right. After I confronted her, Stella broke down completely. Turned out Bowen had manipulated her too, spending months telling her I was cheating, that I had secret gambling debts, that I was planning to leave her after the wedding. When she realized how she'd been played, she agreed to help me expose him. The video I sent Bowen ended with a simple text overlay. "Look up, bro." And that's when every guest's phone simultaneously received a notification for a live stream titled, "Why Today's Wedding is Cancelled," a presentation by Tyler Weston. Mom dropped her bouquet. Dad's bow tie seemed to deflate along with his pride in his younger son. And my soon-to-be father-in-law, a federal judge with zero tolerance for bullshit, slowly turned his Harvard-educated glare toward my trembling brother. I cleared my throat, straightened my boutonniere, and addressed our 175 closest friends and family members, who were now completely silent, phones in hand, mouths agape. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for coming to witness my wedding. Unfortunately, there's been a change of plans. Instead of a ceremony, you're about to witness an execution. Socially speaking, of course." Stella, still in her $12,000 Vera Wang, moved to stand beside me, not as my bride, but as my co-presenter. That's when Bowen realized he hadn't just lost a battle. He'd lost the entire war. "Tyler, bro, come on," he started, his voice cracking like he was 13 again. "No, you come on," I replied, nodding to the club's AV guy who projected the video onto the massive screen originally intended for our wedding montage. "Everyone deserves to know exactly who you are before we continue, including Mom and Dad, who just last week amended their will to make you trustee of the family foundation, including your girlfriend Paige over there, who might want to check her own messages for fidelity, and especially including me, who's been wondering for years why every good thing in my life mysteriously falls apart." As the video began playing on the giant screen, showing Bowen's full confession, I loosened my tie and smiled at my guests. "I know you all came for a wedding, and honestly, so did I. But sometimes the best gift isn't the one you register for. The thing about public executions is that everyone wants a front row seat until the blade actually drops." As Bowen's confession played on the big screen, in 4K with Dolby surround sound because I spared no expense on wedding vendors, our guests became the world's most overdressed Jerry Springer audience. "Is this real?" whispered Aunt Virginia to Uncle Harold, who was already recording the whole thing on his iPhone. "Great situational awareness, Harold. Always the family archivist." "Oh, it's real," I announced, switching to presenter mode. "And we're just getting started. Stella, would you like to share Exhibit B?" Stella, who deserves an Oscar for her performance as remorseful fiancé turned whistleblower, stepped forward. She was still wearing her veil, a detail so ironically perfect I couldn't have scripted it better. "2 months ago," she began, her voice stronger than I expected, "Bowen told me Tyler had a gambling addiction and was planning to use our honeymoon fund to pay off debts. He showed me fake bank statements and everything." Dad's eyes narrowed to slits. "He hates 2 things in this world: financial irresponsibility and liars. Congratulations, Bowen. You just became both in his eyes." The screen switched to screenshots of Bowen's elaborate deception, doctored bank statements, fake emails from debt collectors, even a convincing-looking gambling app history he'd created to show Stella. My brother may be morally bankrupt, but his Photoshop skills are impressive. That's not," Bowen sputtered, looking around desperately for an ally. His girlfriend Paige had already moved 3 rows back, sitting with arms crossed beside my college roommate Dexter, who was offering her his flask. Northeast hospitality at its finest. "Oh, I'm sorry," I interrupted, clicking to the next slide. "Were you going to say that's not the only time? Because you're right." The screen filled with a carefully curated timeline labeled Bowen's Greatest Hits: A Decade of Sabotage. It stretched back to my college girlfriend Mia, continuing through 5 serious relationships, all ending mysteriously after Bowen's intervention. Each entry included dates, methods, and direct quotes from texts he'd sent. "Dude, did you keep receipts of everything?" my cousin Darren called out, half impressed, half horrified. "I'm in cybersecurity, Darren. Keeping receipts is literally my job description." Mom stood up then, her Talbot's pantsuit impeccably pressed despite her world crumbling. "Tyler Franklin Weston, what exactly are you doing to your brother?" And there it was, the first loyalty test. Mom using my middle name like I'm the one who committed a crime. Classic WASP crisis management. Blame the victim for making a scene. "What am I doing to him?" I laughed, but it wasn't the happy laugh from before. This was the laugh of someone who'd spent Thanksgivings being compared to his more charismatic brother, Christmas mornings watching Bowen get the better gifts, and 32 years being told to be more like your brother. "I'm giving him exactly what the Westons value most, Mom. Exposure. Isn't that right, Dad? A man is only as good as his reputation. Page 1 of your playbook." Dad's face was doing that thing where he's trying to look stern, but is secretly calculating how this affects the family image. I could practically see the country club damage control spreadsheet forming in his head. "Son," he began in his courtroom voice, "perhaps we could discuss this privately." Like we discussed how Bowen got the corner office at the firm despite me having more clients? Or like we discussed why he was made partner 2 years earlier than firm protocol? Or maybe like we discussed why he got Grandpa's vintage Rolex even though I was the firstborn? Stella touched my arm. Tyler, the groomsmen photos. Right. I clicked forward to pictures from Bowen's own bachelor party last year. While planning my wedding, my devoted brother was also planning its destruction. Here he is texting Stella while serving as best man at his own engagement party. The photos showed Bowen in his tailored suit, phone in hand, with zoomed-in screenshots of his messages to Stella superimposed. The timestamp is really the chef's kiss, I pointed out. He was telling Stella I was cheating on her literally, while giving a toast about enduring love. That's commitment to the bit. Someone in the back, it sounded suspiciously like my fantasy football commissioner Reed, yelled, "Savage." I made a mental note to give him better draft picks next season. "This is slander," Bowen finally managed, his Harvard law education kicking in too late. "You manipulated Stella into what, telling the truth?" I countered. "Unlike you, I have no interest in manipulation. I just wanted answers." I turned to our stunned audience, which brings me to my favorite part, the motive. The screen changed to video of Bowen in Stella's apartment, wineglass in hand, lounging on my leather couch that I'd bought for her birthday, the one I was still making payments on. "He's always been the golden boy," on-screen Bowen slurred. "Tyler the perfect, Tyler the smart, Dad's little prodigy. Do you know what it's like growing up with that? Being told, why can't you be more like your brother your whole life?" The real Bowen in the ballroom had gone completely still, all color drained from his face. "So yeah," his recorded self continued, "maybe I help karma along sometimes. Keep Big Brother in his place, it's just balancing the scales." I paused the video on his smug face. Plot twist. Turns out I wasn't the golden child after all. I was just the measuring stick used to make him feel inadequate. Ironic, isn't it? Bowen finally found his voice. "You're making me look like a monster." "No. I'm making you look exactly like who you are. There's a difference." I smiled at the stunned crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, there will be no wedding today. The open bar, however, is still very much happening. I already paid the deposit, and unlike some people here, I believe in getting what you pay for." As if on cue, Stella's father, Judge Harrison Pierce, stood up. The man who was supposed to become my father-in-law adjusted his glasses and looked straight at Bowen. "Young man," he said with the same tone he used for sentencing white-collar criminals, "I believe we should continue this discussion at the police station. Fraud, defamation, electronic harassment. Fascinating case study for my summer law students." Bowen looked at our parents for help, but Dad was already walking toward the exit with Mom, both avoiding eye contact with everyone. Family loyalty has its limits, apparently, somewhere around the publicly exposed as sociopaths line. "Oh, and Bowen?" I called as he was being escorted out by Stella's father and 2 off-duty cop cousins. "Remember Dad's beach house in the Hamptons? The one you were supposed to inherit?" I'd start looking at Airbnb listings if I were you. As the doors closed behind them, I loosened my tie completely and turned to the remaining guests. "Now, who wants to see what's behind door number 2? Because Bowen's sabotage was just the appetizer. Wait till you hear about the family inheritance. You'd think exposing your brother as a sociopath at your own wedding would be the climax of the story. But in the Weston family, we believe in exceeding expectations. Just like our family motto should be, why stop at emotional damage when financial ruin is on the menu?" As the ballroom transformed from wedding venue to high society disaster zone, I noticed something interesting. Nobody left. 175 expensively dressed people collectively decided that my personal tragedy was more entertaining than whatever Netflix show they'd planned to binge later. American exceptionalism at its finest. We will absolutely prioritize drama over decorum. "The open bar is that way," I pointed, watching the crowd hesitate between social propriety and free top-shelf liquor. "I'm serious. Macallan 25 isn't going to drink itself." That broke the tension. Within minutes, the carefully planned seating arrangement dissolved as people migrated toward alcohol and gossip, the twin fuels of Connecticut social life. Stella approached me, diamond ring glinting under chandeliers that cost more per day than most people's monthly rent. "What now?" she whispered, looking lost in her designer gown. "Now comes the part I didn't tell you about," I replied, checking my watch. 3, 2, 1. The ballroom doors swung open. Grandpa Weston's attorney, Lincoln Hargrove, entered with the timing of someone who'd been waiting in the parking lot for my text. At 78, Lincoln moved with the deliberate pace of a man who bills $950 an hour and feels no need to rush. Behind him came his assistant carrying 3 leather portfolios, the kind that scream, "Someone's financial future is about to change dramatically." "Is that?" Stella began. "Grandpa's executor?" "Yes. The man who's handled the Weston family trust for 40 years and knows where every penny and every skeleton is buried." "Also, yes." Dad emerged from wherever he'd retreated to lick his wounds, suddenly very interested in the proceedings. "Nothing brings a Weston man back to the table like the sound of a trust fund being discussed." "Tyler, what is the meaning of this?" he demanded, straightening his bow tie like armor. "Glad you asked, Dad. Remember last Thanksgiving when you announced that Grandpa's final wishes would be revealed after my wedding? Well, technically this was after my wedding, just not the part you expected." Lincoln nodded to me as he reached the center of the room. "Mr. Weston, unusual circumstances but legally sound. Your grandfather's instructions were quite specific." Mom appeared at Dad's side, clutching her pearls literally, and her composure figuratively. "This is hardly the appropriate venue, Lincoln." "On the contrary," the old lawyer replied with the faintest smile. "This is precisely the venue stipulated in the trust documents, after Tyler's wedding ceremony, regardless of outcome. Your father-in-law was nothing if not prescient. Now here's what nobody knew, what I myself only discovered 3 weeks ago when Lincoln contacted me privately. Grandpa Weston, that crafty old fox, had amended his will shortly before his death last year. He'd always seen through Bowen's act, it turns out. The summer before he died, he'd overheard Bowen bragging to his frat brothers by the pool about managing the Tyler situation. Lincoln opened the first portfolio and adjusted his reading glasses. "Before we proceed, is Bowen Weston present?" "He's being given a tour of the local precinct," I supplied helpfully. "Judge Pierce thought he might enjoy seeing the legal system from a new perspective." "I see." Lincoln made a notation. "Then we shall proceed without him. Harrison Weston's final amendment to the family trust, dated August 12th of last year, contains the following provision. The distribution of my assets shall be contingent upon a character test of my grandsons." Dad's face went from concerned to alarmed. "What character test?" "Your father was quite ingenious," Lincoln continued, unruffled. "He set a trap. He deliberately leaked different information to each grandson about inheritance plans. To Bowen, he suggested Tyler would be disinherited. To Tyler, he implied Bowen would receive the bulk of the estate. Then he watched what each did with that information. I couldn't help myself. Grandpa pulled a Tyrion Lannister on us, Dad. He told different people different secrets to see who leaked what." Mom sank into a chair. "Oh, God." "Indeed," Lincoln nodded. The amendment continues. "Having observed the character of both my grandsons over time, I have determined that Tyler Franklin Weston shall receive the entirety of my personal holdings, including the Hamptons property, my partnership stake in Weston and Associates, and full control of the Weston Family Foundation. Bowen Alexander Weston shall receive a stipend of $3,000 monthly, managed in trust, contingent upon gainful employment outside the family businesses." The room erupted in whispers. Dad looked like he'd been slapped with a wet newspaper. "You knew?" he finally managed. "For 3 weeks," I confirmed. "Lincoln contacted me after I postponed the wedding the first time. Yes, there was a first time. When I initially found out about Stella and Bowen. Grandpa had a contingency for that too. The inheritance was secure whether I got married or not. He just wanted to see what I'd do when tested. The true brilliance of my plan wasn't exposing Bowen at my wedding. It was doing it in exactly the way that fulfilled Grandpa's final test. With evidence, without violence, and with a certain flair he would have appreciated. The wedding was always going to end this way, from the moment I discovered Bowen's betrayal. While you were raising Bowen to be a replica of yourself, I told Dad, Grandpa was apparently keeping score. And guess what? Sabotaging your brother and manipulating women doesn't win points with the greatest generation. Dad loosened his bow tie, finally defeated. Your grandfather always was a better judge of character than I was. Well, Mom interjected, ever the crisis manager, we should discuss this as a family, privately. Actually, Lincoln interrupted, there are several more provisions, including immediate removal of both Charles and Margaret Weston. That's you, he clarified unnecessarily to my parents, from all decision-making positions in the Weston Family Foundation, effective immediately. And there it was, the twist nobody saw coming, including me until 3 weeks ago. Grandpa hadn't just been testing us grandkids, he'd been testing his son too. And apparently, Dad had failed just as spectacularly as Bowen. I looked around the ballroom at the mix of horrified and delighted faces. Stella stood frozen, the woman who almost married into this beautiful disaster. Judge Pierce was taking notes, probably for his next book on family law. And somewhere across town, Bowen was likely being explained his Miranda rights, still unaware that his world had collapsed financially as well as socially. Lincoln closed his portfolio with a finality that echoed, Mr. Weston, shall we proceed to the private signing, or would you prefer to continue entertaining your guests? Just one more thing, I said, turning to address the room. To those wondering if this was all an elaborate scheme to secure my inheritance, it wasn't. I didn't know about Grandpa's changes until after I caught Bowen. But sometimes justice arrives in convenient packages. I straightened my tie and smiled at the crowd. If you'll excuse me, it appears I have some documents to sign. Please enjoy the cake, it's red velvet, matching both the theme and the bloodbath. As Lincoln and I headed toward the door, Stella caught my arm. Tyler, what about us? Was any of it real? I looked at her, really looked at her for what felt like the first time. The question isn't whether it was real, Stella. The question is whether it would have lasted. And unlike my family fortune, I'm afraid that answer was never going to be in your favor. The thing about inheritance documents is they take forever to sign, almost as long as it takes Connecticut elites to process that their carefully constructed social hierarchy just imploded. As Lincoln and I finished the paperwork in a private room, I could hear the reception transitioning from shocked whispers to full-blown gossip carnival. Nothing says wasp crisis like the sound of ice clinking in Scotch glasses with increasing frequency. Your grandfather would be pleased, Lincoln remarked, sliding the final document across the mahogany table, though perhaps not with your choice of venue. Grandpa appreciated efficiency, I countered, signing with a flourish. Why waste a perfectly good open bar and captive audience? Just as I finished, my phone buzzed with a text from Judge Pierce. Be released on own recognizance. Coming back, ETA 10 minutes. Perfect timing. Act 3 was about to begin. Lincoln, I said, would you mind waiting here? There's something I need to do alone. The old lawyer nodded, understanding more than I'd said. He'd been handling Weston family drama since before I was born. This was probably tame compared to Grandpa's wilder days. I returned to the ballroom just as Bowen stormed through the doors, face flushed and hair disheveled. He ditched the boutonniere but kept the rage. Dad intercepted him before he could reach me, whispering urgently in his ear, presumably breaking the inheritance news. The transformation was magnificent, from furious to devastated in the span of 3 sentences. You can't do this, Bowen finally said, pushing past Dad to confront me. This was your plan all along. I laughed so genuinely it almost hurt. My plan? Bowen, buddy, I'm good, but I'm not manipulate you into seducing my fiancé so I can expose you and coincidentally fulfill our grandfather's secret inheritance test good. That would make me, well, you. Mom stepped between us, ever the peacemaker when family money was at stake. Boys, please, we can contest the will. Charles has excellent attorneys. Actually, I interrupted, you don't. Not anymore. As of 20 minutes ago, I'm the majority shareholder in Weston and Associates. Dad's name is on the letterhead, but Grandpa owned 51%, which means technically Dad now works for me. Dad looked like he might need medical attention. 30 years of patriarchal authority evaporated faster than cheap cologne. You wouldn't fire your own father, he managed, voice uncharacteristically small. Fire you? No, but I am implementing some changes. I turned to address the room at large, raising my voice to reach the back rows. Since we're all here, I might as well make a formal announcement. Weston and Associates will be transitioning to new leadership effective Monday morning. Our first order of business? A full audit of all client accounts, particularly those handled by Bowen. Bowen's face went from red to white faster than the Polish flag. You can't. Those are my clients. Actually, I smiled. They're the firm's clients. And I've received some concerning reports about irregularities in your billing practices. Nothing major, just systematic overcharging and possibly some creative accounting. Judge Pierce moved closer. Legal interest peaked. What kind of irregularities are we talking about, Tyler? The kind documented in these files. I nodded to Dexter, who had been waiting for his cue. My college roommate, now a forensic accountant with the IRS, approached with a leather folder of his own. Dexter's been reviewing copies of records I've been gathering for the past 6 weeks. Fascinating reading. This wasn't part of Grandpa's test. This was my own addition. The culmination of suspicions I'd had for years about Bowen's inexplicable ability to afford Rolex watches and Aspen ski trips on a junior partner's salary. You've been spying on me? Bowen sputtered, looking around desperately for allies and finding none. Not spying, investigating, and before you ask, yes, it's all legal. As a partner with cybersecurity expertise, I have full access to the firm's financial systems. I was just being thorough. Dexter cleared his throat. We've identified discrepancies in at least 12 client accounts, Judge. Looking at preliminary findings, we're talking about potential wire fraud, billing fraud, and possible tax evasion. This is a setup, Bowen insisted, sweating through his Tom Ford suit. Tyler hacked. Please don't finish that sentence, I interrupted. Falsely accusing a licensed cybersecurity professional of hacking is slander. And haven't you been in enough legal trouble today? Mom was openly crying now, mascara creating abstract art on her cheeks. Dad looked like a statue, if statues could have stress-induced acid reflux. Why? Bowen finally asked, the single word containing a lifetime of entitlement. Why go this far? Because you never learned where to stop, I replied simply. When we were kids and you broke my science fair project, that was rivalry. When you hooked up with my prom date, that was cruelty. But systematically destroying every meaningful relationship I've had for 10 years, that's pathology. And pathology has consequences. I turned to Judge Pierce. The files are yours, Your Honor. My company's official forensic report will follow on Monday. Bowen looked at our parents with desperate eyes. Dad, you have to stop this. He's destroying the family. Dad finally found his voice. The family. He laughed hollowly. The family was destroyed the moment you decided your brother was your enemy. I failed you both by not seeing it sooner. And there it was. The first honest thing my father had said in years. Amid the wreckage of country club propriety and family reputation, a small truth emerged. What happens now? Stella asked quietly, still somehow part of this nightmare despite having no legal obligation to stay. Now, I said, checking my watch. The reception ends in 30 minutes. The honeymoon suite at the Four Seasons is paid through Monday, and I have a significant family business to restructure. I looked around at the assembled witnesses to our family's implosion. As for the rest of you, congratulations. You just attended the most expensive therapy session in Connecticut history. The gift bags are by the door. I caught Dad's eye as the crowd began to disperse. You once told me the most important thing a Weston man could have was control. You were wrong. It's clarity. As Bowen was escorted out, this time by Dexter and 2 actual federal agents who had been surprisingly patient wedding guests, I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just peace. The kind that comes from finally setting down a weight you've carried so long you forgot it was there. Mom approached, her perfect socialite mask completely shattered. Will you ever forgive us? She asked, voice cracking. I considered her question seriously. Forgiveness isn't the point, Mom. Boundaries are. And mine start with the truth. Something this family has been allergic to for generations. As the ballroom emptied, I loosened my tie completely and removed it, officially ending the charade of this being anything remotely resembling a wedding day. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the sunset over the lake. The romantic backdrop intended for wedding photos now just a pretty end to an ugly day. I checked my phone to find a text from a number I hadn't seen in 2 years. Heard what happened. Call me if you want to talk. Eliza. Sometimes the universe has a wicked sense of timing. Stella appeared at my side, wedding dress slightly wrinkled from the day's drama. Was any of it real? Us, I mean. I looked at her, beautiful, flawed, and ultimately complicit Stella, and found an unexpected honesty. Parts of it, just not enough of the important parts. She nodded, understanding more than I'd said. Goodbye, Tyler. As she walked away, I realized the revenge I'd orchestrated had changed more than just Bowen's future. It had rewritten my past and present, too. Some victories come with their own kind of loss. I picked up a forgotten champagne flute and raised it to the empty room. Here's to clarity. 3 days after what the Greenwich Country Club newsletter diplomatically called an unfortunate interruption to the Weston Pierce nuptials, I found myself sitting on the deck of Grandpa's, my beach house in the Hamptons. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was drinking scotch from the same crystal tumbler Bowen had always claimed would be his someday. The Atlantic stretched out before me, indifferent to family drama and inheritance battles. That's the thing about the ocean. It couldn't care less about your stock portfolio or your LinkedIn achievements. Nature, the ultimate perspective check. My phone had been blowing up with texts from relatives taking sides in what Mom was now calling this unfortunate misunderstanding. Apparently, in Margaret Weston's reality, exposing years of sabotage and potential felony fraud qualifies as a misunderstanding. The woman could rebrand nuclear winter as an unexpected temperature fluctuation. Dad had been suspiciously silent, though Lincoln informed me he'd moved into the Four Seasons. Ironic, considering that's where my honeymoon was supposed to start. Maybe he was enjoying the chocolate-covered strawberries I'd pre-ordered. At least someone should. The family was splintering along predictable lines. Dad's siblings closing ranks around the patriarchy. Mom's side gleefully enjoying the spectacle while pretending concern. Distant cousins suddenly remembering my birthday after years of selective amnesia. American family dynamics, where blood is thicker than water but thinner than inheritance prospects. I took another sip and watched the waves. The familiar weight of family obligation had lifted, replaced by something lighter but less certain. Freedom, I guess, the expensive kind that comes with its own set of complications. Mr. Weston? My thoughts were interrupted by Grandpa's, my housekeeper, Mrs. Sullivan. There's someone here to see you. Before I could ask who, Eliza Jenkins appeared at the door to the deck, looking exactly as I remembered and completely different at the same time. 2 years had changed her. Harder around the edges, more confident in her stance. Your security system is too complicated, she said by way of greeting. The gate almost didn't let me in. It's designed to keep out people who aren't supposed to be here, I replied, neither welcoming nor dismissing her. Am I supposed to be here? She tilted her head, challenging me in that way she always had. That depends on why you came. She took a seat uninvited, eyes on the ocean instead of me. Heard you burned down your life on Saturday. Wanted to see if you needed a fire extinguisher or more matches. I laughed despite myself. This was why we'd worked. Her ability to cut through pretense. Who told you? Judge Pierce's clerk is my roommate. Plus, it's all over the Connecticut legal gossip chain. Weston family implosion is trending among people who summer as a verb. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the kind only possible with someone who's seen you at your worst and hasn't completely written you off. So, she finally said, your brother really did lie about you cheating on me? Apparently, it was his specialty. She nodded, processing. I always wondered why the evidence came from him. Should have questioned it more. We all should have questioned more things. I poured her a scotch without asking if she wanted one. She took it without asking what kind it was. Some habits survive even broken relationships. Heard you're a corporate big shot now, she said, taking a sip. Turns out my grandfather was playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. Who knew? I knew, she said simply. Not about the inheritance, obviously, but that you were underestimated. Coming from anyone else, it would have sounded like opportunistic flattery. From Eliza, it was just an observation, neither compliment nor criticism. So what happens now, Tyler? You run the company, destroy your brother, reconcile with your parents, ride off into the Connecticut sunset? I considered her question. Parts of it. Running the company, yes. The rest, I'm not interested in destruction or reconciliation. Just boundaries. Boundaries? She raised an eyebrow. That doesn't sound like the Weston family I met. Maybe that's the point. Maybe the best revenge isn't just exposing the truth. It's becoming someone different because of it. She studied me carefully. You seem different. Less desperate for approval, I suggested. I was going to say wound up, but yours works too. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in colors no Connecticut country club decorator would ever approve of. Too bold, too honest, too real. A perfect backdrop for painful truths. You know what I realized, Eliza? All those years I thought I was fighting for my place in the family. Turns out, I was fighting for a family that didn't exist. The Westons were never what I thought they were, what I needed them to be. And now? I shrugged. Now I get to decide what family means, what matters, who stays. She nodded, understanding the implicit question. I didn't come here to reclaim anything, Tyler. I came because 2 years ago, I left without the truth. Seemed worth showing up for it now. And was it? Worth it? Her smile was small but genuine. Ask me after another scotch. As night fell over the Atlantic, I realized that revenge wasn't the satisfying endpoint I'd imagined. It was just the beginning of something else. Something without a predetermined Weston family script to follow. You know what Grandpa used to say? I said, refilling our glasses. Success is a terrible teacher. It's comfortable failure that really educates. Comfortable failure? Eliza questioned. The kind where you lose exactly what you need to lose. Nothing more, nothing less. She considered this, then raised her glass. To comfortable failure, then. And uncomfortable truths, I added, clinking my tumbler against hers. The ocean continued its eternal rhythm, caring nothing for our epiphanies or failures. That's the funny thing about revenge. Once you get it, you realize it was never the point. The point was always the clarity that comes after. When you finally see the cage you've been living in was mostly built by your own expectations. Some people spend their whole lives trying to win family games that were rigged from the start. I'd finally stopped playing, and somehow that felt like the real inheritance.